حي على الفلاح.
Adam Hafiz, he says, I've been training to be a doctor for some years now. I can still see the faces of many of the patients who have been told that their end is near. Many have casually sailed through life without a sense of urgency for making the most of their time. Now, they look on in terror and despair as it dawns on them that they have wasted their most valuable gift, their life. It's a tragedy to see people realize that life is short only when it's too late. They may not know it, but what I see reminds me never to waste a moment. Death takes some of us young, some of us old, some of us suddenly. But in the end, it takes us all. Oh Lord, if only you would give me a little more time so that I can give charity and be one of the righteous. But never will Allah delay a soul when its time has come, and Allah is acquainted with what you do. Multitudes of men have walked on the surface of this earth. They all belong to different nations and cultures. A few of them made history for which they were remembered, whereas others were never to be mentioned again. Although each one was personally different from another, their habits, thinking, and tastes differed. They all had two things in common. First, they were all delivered from their mother's womb, birth. And second, they all tasted death. Every soul shall taste death, and you will be paid your wages in full on the day of resurrection. So he who is distanced from the fire and admitted to the garden has indeed triumphed. And the life of this world is only the enjoyment of delusion. One of the indisputable facts that requires no debate is that mankind fears nothing more in his life than death. Many people hate the word death, perhaps because it is mysterious to us, or because we associate it with the grave, and associate the grave with darkness, solitude, and constriction. Or perhaps because we love life regardless of its state, and love our children, family, and friends. Many people view death as a separation between them and their loved ones, after which there is no reunion. In contrast, thinking that when man dies, everything comes to an end, and he feels nothing, and that he goes from existence into absence and non-existence. It is an erroneous delusion, a delusion propagated by materialism and atheism. It is necessary to know that death is but a transition from one abode to another, from a mortal life to an eternal one. And the notion that death is the end, after which there is only absence of man, is a major mistake that no one can accept. O you who believe, do not let your wealth, your children, divert you from the remembrance of Allah. Whoever does so, then they are indeed the losers. And give from what we have provided for you, before death comes to one of you and he says, O Lord, if only you would give me a little more time so that I can give charity and be one of the righteous. But never will Allah delay a soul when its time has come, and Allah is acquainted with what you do. Death is among the very few certainties of this dunya, and in its remembrance we come to reflect on how we use our time. Death teaches us that amassing wealth and status is ultimately useless. Our dollar bills will be of no use to us in the grave. Instead, we should focus on worshiping Allah and performing good deeds. These are the actions that will bring us enduring benefits that will last beyond the grave and bring us success on the day of judgment. Every moment we have is a moment to better prepare for our deaths. Allah has given you this time, so don't waste it. There are so many ways to draw closer to Allah, such as giving charity, seeking knowledge, fasting, educating, memorizing the Quran, and so many more. The Quran warns us of the disbeliever who fails to use his time for serving Allah. When death comes to one of them, he says, "My Lord, send me back, that I might do righteousness in that which I left behind." No, it is only a word he is saying, and behind them is a barrier until the day they are resurrected. Like the individual described in the above ayah, when we face the reality of death, we desperately desire to prepare for the life that follows it in a way that is best. However, for the individual who used this world only to serve himself and reject the guidance of Allah, it'll be too late. Your efforts are sealed at the point of death, and these efforts will decide your position for the hereafter. We all know of arrogant, egotistical individuals who walk boastfully on this earth. Such people are nothing new, with excessive vanity going back to the time of the pharaohs and beyond. The final ayah of Surah Maryam leaves us with a powerful reflection. And how many have we destroyed before them of generations? Do you perceive of them anyone or hear from them a sound? The Quran highlights that even the most proud and conceited people came to destruction. Their wealth and status were utterly useless, and Allah lowered them all to dust and bones. Pride and greed are the drivers of oppression, something that many of us are the victim of. However, we can take comfort that every oppressor will one day breathe their last. Allah will bring their deeds in front of their despairing eyes on the day of judgment. So let us be reminded by the deaths of others, and not wait until our own demise to be altered to our fate, and learn the truth when it is too late. Death is the fate of everyone and everything. It is the reality that cannot be escaped, the affliction that cannot be missed. Say, indeed, the death from which you flee, indeed it will meet you. Then you will be returned to the knower of the unseen and the witnessed, and he will inform you about what you used to do. Death is indeed a catastrophe and disaster as Allah described it. But heedlessness of death is the greatest calamity and disaster. To avoid mentioning or thinking of it leaves one unprepared for their fate. Never was the messenger heedless of death, nor were his companions, nor their successors, meaning the righteous predecessors of our nation. Death itself was enough of a warning for them, not least the death of family and close friends, or their own illnesses and flirtation with death. It served as a reminder of a looming deadline for which they prepared vigorously. Ibn Umar said, "If you awaken, then do not expect the evening, and if you sleep, do not expect the morning, and take from your life provision for your death." It severed their heart's connection to this world and prevented them from indulging in its pleasures. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz would gather scholars in his court on most nights to remind him of Allah and of death. Rather than delighting in the opulence his position could have gained him, they would weep as though they were attending a funeral. He asked one of them once, "Admonish me." So he said, "You are not the first Khalifa to die." Umar said, "Increase my admonishment." The scholar continued, "All of your forefathers until Adam tasted death, and now is your turn." So Umar wept. Al-Hasan said, I never saw an intelligent man except that death would serve as a warning for him and cause him sorrow. Ash'ath said, we would enter upon Al-Hasan and the topic would be the fire, the affairs of the hereafter, and remembrance of death. Al-Rabi' ibn Khathyam would say, if my heart forgets death for 1 hour, it will be corrupted. Al-Hasan al-Basri had a grave in his house that he would lie in at night to remember his death. He would rise out of it reciting Allah's verses until when death comes to one of them, the disbelievers, he says, my Lord sent me back that I might do righteousness in that which I left behind. Then he would stand the night in prayer. Death is a reality we cannot turn our back on. And as the time has come for many before us, so too must we prepare for our time.